Hello everyone. So in this class, I will be explaining the chapter Bill of Exchange. It is kind of a nightmare to many students, like doing Bill of Exchange, some at one go correctly. Now these all are, the dreams of students, I guess, of commerce at least. And that brings us to discussing the chapter Bill of Exchange. That is our chapter today. Now I will take almost 3 to 4 classes to finish off this chapter, and let's discuss what will be our lesson for today. Now this will be our agenda for today. Let's start. Meaning and features of bill. What does the bill contain and its importance? So let's understand the meaning of bill of exchange. Now let's take a seller and a buyer. Now the seller is having a lot of pens and he wants to sell them. Now the buyer approaches to him and says to him that, listen, I want to take 1000 pens worth rupees 10,000. Alright. So he is willing to buy from the seller an amount of pens worth rupees 10,000. The seller becomes very confused and skeptical. Like, if I give this money to the person, will he return this back to me? Is it safe? And so many more. So then he decided, after so much of confusion, that let's give the money to this person. So he gave the pins, and in return, obviously, he wanted the money. But he said that I will not be giving the money to you now. I will be giving the money back to you after 1 month. And then to the buyer, the seller is like, no way, I am not giving you. And the buyer convinced, tried, keep on convincing. So then the seller was like, okay, fine, I will sell it to you, but on a condition. You will be giving me the money back absolutely at the end of the month. Alright? And then he took a paper. He wrote in it that you have to give me the money back within the end of the month and worth rupees 10,000. He was very specific as to what he wanted at the end of the month. And then he wrote this agreement. Now this is an agreement. Then he signed it. The seller, who is the maker of the bill, signed it. And the buyer, who is the receiver of the bill, also signed it. So both the signatures were done. And they went to the court, got it stamped. Now, after the end of 1 month, the person came back, that means the buyer, he came back to the seller and gave him the money worth rupees 10,000. Now, why did the maker of the bill, like the seller, make this bill of exchange? Make this information. Now, the question is, why did the seller write this agreement? He wrote this agreement because in case if the seller goes wrong, if the seller faces a loss, then he has to take any step. He will be able to go to the court to suit a file against this person, the buyer. Alright, this was the motive. Because previously many sellers had faced this kind of an issue where people took away goods from them and never returned back the money. And such problems made the court come to a point, and finally the Negotiable Instrument Act according to 1881 came up. Now what is this Negotiable Instrument Act? It says that this kind of an agreement has to be built up in order to save themselves. Save the sellers, save the buyers. In case the sellers might also demand higher money and the buyer can, take away the money and never come back with the money. Right? So to avoid this kind of a problem, this situation was done. Now the bill of exchange has a legal binding, that means it is bound under the Negotiable Instrument Act 1881. And next, it is an instrument. The bill of exchange is an instrument. Now, what is an instrument? An instrument is a medium used to initiate the funds. You know, if you have to transfer the fund from one place to another, from one person to another, you generally use Google Pay, Paytm, and so many more. But this is also one of the instruments which was used before this electronic thing came into so much of relevance. So let's understand what the bill contains. The bill contains an unconditional order, which means that if you try to change your mind, that you know, if you give me a treat of rupees 5,000 in Calcutta or some nice restaurant, only then I will be paying you the bill. No. You cannot impose any extra condition. It has to be unconditional after it has been prepared. After the bill has been stamped, agreed, signed, no more conditions will be imposed on that bill. This is called unconditional. Next comes directing someone to pay. So the bill directs one person to pay the amount. Who directs whom? The seller directs the buyer to pay. Alright. So directing thing is concerned with seller directs it to buyer to pay the certain sum of money within a certain time period. Got it? Next, a certain amount of money. What I told you, directs the seller directs the buyer to pay a certain sum of money within a certain time period. Alright, so this is all about the content of a bill. Now let's discuss the features of a bill. Firstly, it should not be oral. Anything in oral is not accepted. So it has to be written. Then it has to be stamped. Alright. Next, it has to be an unconditional order. Why unconditional? I explained you in the previous part. Okay. Now the buyer must accept the bill. Suppose the seller is writing the bill and giving it to the buyer, and the buyer did not even sign the bill, did not even accept the bill. Alright. So it is draft. If the buyer does not accept the bill is of no use. It has got no stamp and it is of no purpose. Next is both the seller and the buyer must sign the bill. For the bill to be accepted, for the bill to get stamped, for the bill to be bounded by the law, that is under the Negotiable Instrument Act 1881, signing, accepting of both the parties, that is seller and buyer, is equally important. Now we will discuss the importance of bill of exchange. Why do we actually conduct bill of exchange? Number one, we want to avoid, basically the seller wants to avoid a delay in the payment. He wants a timely payment. So for that he wants an insurance, right? So that is why, to avoid the delayed payment, he does this. Next comes, he wants to avoid the loss, that is faulty payment avoidance. Alright. Next comes assurance. He gets the assurance that he has to wait for this much of time, he will be getting this much of money, and he is also sure that it is bounded by the law, and the person who is buying cannot really fly away taking his goods and not giving his money. And next is transparency. He has a certain picture in front of him which is transparent enough about what will happen in future. Alright, so this is all about this class. So the next part I will be explaining to you in the next class, which will be about endorsement of bill, discounting of bill, who are the parties to the bill, and so much more. Keep watching. Thank you.